Hey everybody, if you're listening to this, thank you for tuning in to the first ever GBL content that we're posting publicly. Here's a quick preseason match and just some warm-ups between myself, Technicolor Sky, and my friend Rafahell. Raf here is going to be running a more conventional deck, and I'm using something a little bit more unique, but that's generally what I like to do. Up first, you have here his Hover Wyvern versus my Wolf Hunt. I actually am trying to do a lot of different stuff with the Wolf Hunt today. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you'll see right here we get some early huge hits from the side of Hover. Wolf is actually able to tank those pretty good. I believe I had Wolf on Under Needle. And I really like this combination throughout the day. I thought I did well. So we were able to hold on, outspin there, and that brings us to our second match. And here he's running a pretty attack-optimized Phoenix. This is something that would hold up well in the meta, and I'm actually running my Wolf Hunt again. I'll explain this a little bit more either later in the video or in another video, but we do play by slightly different rules. We do the first to 4 wins, as you'll see on the sideboard here. And we generally have some different switch out rules, lockout rules if you do choose to switch out, and winners can choose to keep their blade going. Here you'll see he actually decides to keep his Phoenix, and I pull out my Drasil on Spike, which is probably the favorite Beyblade that I own. It shouldn't really hold up very well in a competitive sense, but I've had great luck with it so far this year, and it's one that I really enjoy using just because it usually takes people by surprise, especially on Spike, and I've had pretty good results with it so far. You'll see right here, it's just able to simply tank and outspin his Phoenix, which I love. This Drasil is a little bit light, but somehow, the recoil, it stays low. It is able to bounce back and always stay on balance, so that's why it does pretty well. I actually run the Drasil again against his Behemoth, which is some combination of Emperor Might and Pegasus Blast, and that thing is a heavy hitter. It actually ends up pocketing me here, and that takes us to two versus 2 wins on the match so far. So we're about halfway through, each trying to get to our 4th win. And that actually swings us over to the next match where he runs his Blast Emperor again, and I pull out my Fox Brush, which is probably my second favorite blade. I really like the gold coloration of it. I choose most of the Beyblades that I like to use, even competitively, based off how they look. And somewhat surprisingly, I actually went on a spin finish. This Fox was on Rush, which is actually a pretty good fit and one that I've been happy with so far using it. But I was happy about that win there. It takes me to 3 wins. At this point, we have a little bit of a loser condition choosing rule, or if you're on 3 wins, you can also pick your Beyblade. So I go ahead and use Drasil again. He pulls out Hover. Hover just gets some huge hits on Drasil, and this is pretty par for the course. I don't know why, but that Spike always gets Drasil back middle, and it ends up holding up pretty well in this and is able to outspin him again, which brings me to 4 wins. And the first match total, or the first complete match win, is mine, which you'll see here on the scoreboard. So that brings us to our next round. We both got a little bit bored and wanted to try something unique. So you'll see some Beyblades here that are really a lot different from what the normal meta is using on either side, and that's perfectly fine. This is one of those things where we really just wanted to get a better sense of what was working and what wasn't working. I think here in the beginning he runs this Golem, I believe it's on Free Ball, out against my Fort Hornet, which is a blade I don't really know how to feel about. It's pretty top heavy, it's pretty tall, and somehow it's underneath him in this round and ends up being able to actually outspin him. So that was a round that kind of surprised everybody and made me wonder what I was actually running with this Fort Hornet to see if it could be something more viable, which, as you may see later on, doesn't actually end up being the case for most of this match. Another new Beyblade I actually recently bought that I really wanted to use out was Obsidian Shell. I tried using it on Under Needle. I really love the look of this Bey, so I want to try to get it to work in a competitive sense, at least be somewhat usable with the right lineups and the right combinations. Obviously that did not happen here with a really early burst from his Shark, and that takes us to the next round where he's going for the left spin here. I usually don't match up very well with this blade throughout the match. In this case, it's no different right here, where I'm actually trying to use a Gill Shark. I believe believe on Hexa. I need to check what it was actually on, but it just simply doesn't do well here. Gill Shark is another one of these. I got the Hasbro coloration recently. I think the color is absolutely phenomenal. It's a cool looking blade. I'm not sure if it's actually possible to make it viable competitively, but it's something that I would really try to to figure out more here in the next weeks, in the early part of the season that we're going to be launching here shortly. That brings us to the next round. He chooses to keep Cobalt Dragoon on the field, and I bring back out my Fort Hornet, which after that first match I had high hopes for. You'll see right here we get some early contact, and ultimately nothing that ends up being extremely explosive, which is unfortunate. Once you get into these wars of attrition with Dragoon, it's usually game over. This was no different, especially using a CX bait here. So yeah, you'll see this round out without too much drama. And that may actually give me a quick second to talk about our rules a little bit more. We do like to actually have these different matchups and try to pull a little bit more strategy into it. The sacrifice of this was obviously not being able to use the pockets and the extreme finishes for 1, 2, and 3 point scoring like you see normally, which is very fun. It's a great mechanic of the game, and it's something that's a cost here, but ultimately that's just a sacrifice we decided to make. Here he pulls back out his shark. I go ahead and try running Obsidian Shell on Underneedle again and get bursts once again. So for me, that was enough of that combination for the night. Was really disappointed with Obsidian overall. I feel like it can't really take hits or balance well, but ultimately that ties things up at 1-1 with total matches, and then we move to the next count. Now here is a little bit of a fun move. We were both still in experimental mode, and we hadn't moved back into really testing what we want to use lineup-wise for the actual season. This is why it's preseason, of course, from production value standpoint here, as you can see, and really from the way we were playing. But I actually have a heavy metal system Beyblade from about 20 years ago, a hopper attack that I launched left spin. We agreed after reviewing it that it would actually be fine height-wise to compete with some of these Beyblades, and testing it, it really works well in the arena, so we gave that a shot, and it actually won in the beginning. After that, we move into a pretty slow-paced match. I believe here is Shell again versus his Wolf, and this Wolf was either on ball or free ball, but you're just not going to outspin that. It's not really a winnable match for a Shell that I was still experimenting with, so I take the L here. Relatively slow-paced match. I probably should have sped this up a little more now that I'm doing the voiceover and looking at things. So now we're tied up 1-1 after that surprising hopper attack win. I love that. And then we actually have a shark matchup. Shark scale against Gill Shark. I really want this Gill Shark to work. I believe I actually tried running it on Hexa this time, and the blade just might not be heavy enough. I still got to experiment a little bit. I actually think there's some quietly interesting things to the shape of the blade, but that was not the move against Shark Scale. It just got out-competed in every way, and I'm still looking for ways to, potentially run that Shark on Shark and have it be successful. He actually keeps his Shark Scale out here, and I need to bring back my Hopper Attack because of where we're at in rotation, and this is just a bloodbath. Hopper Attack is too light, too small. It couldn't really spin steel this round because of those explosive hits in the beginning, and ultimately just ends up tapering out pretty ineffectively. So, I'm happy I used it. It's probably asking to get broken if I keep using it like this, so I'll try to be a little bit more careful with it in the future. But again, I really enjoy that such an old Beyblade can show up and compete, and I think it's a testament to the heavy metal system design that they had so long ago. Now it is time for what ends up being the final round here. I believe it's my Shell. I tried to run it on 360 Underneedle this time because I was having so much success with Underneedle in other areas, and he just hit me clean out with an extreme finish. Of course, we're not counting that, but that brings him to a lead with overall total matches won at 2. Then we move into this third match. At this point, we were kind of done experimenting for the night and wanted to try to run some things that, we actually want to use during the regular season. So here we get to a pretty classic matchup that we've done probably 50 times at this point, of my Fox Brush versus his hover. It's a pretty classic hover. I believe it's on kick, and there's an early collision here that ultimately sends his hover out, which is, you know, kind of how the blade actually works. It's feast or famine, but that was a good early win for me. After that, I actually decide to keep Fox Brush out. Fox Brush is really not a very meta pick, but I love using it. It's just an interesting blade. I think it looks beautiful, and this 460 rush, I don't get burst very often. It keeps it low, and it allows it to get some hard hits in, which it does right here. You'll see, and ultimately that brings me to an early 2-1 against a very classically or 2-0 actually, against a very classically meta team that he has here. Some of the best in the game. This is what I expect him to use often during the regular season. I actually pull out my Dracil and immediately get a recoil pocket against his Shark Scale. It hits me really hard, but as I've said, this Dracil can take hits and stay upright and stay balanced, and that's exactly what it did right there. Here we have 3 wins. I pull out my Dracil again, and he pulls out his Hover Wyvern, since he is any Beyblade the rules that we were using. And he actually gets the pocket on me here. Heavy hit just drives me into the side, and you know, this is what Hover Wyvern does.
3-1. Oh, 3-1.
We then have the final, I believe it's the final match. Let's see if my memory is holding up here. I believe it's the final match of this round, and he actually chooses to run his hover again, which he has the right to do. That's part of why I like this rule system, because you can choose the matchup that you want if you're losing. And I run my Wolf Hunt, I believe, on 160 under Needle, which was a fantastic combination for me. I would be curious if anybody else has tried this, if it's worked for you. Please feel free to drop that in the comment section of this video. But yeah, that brings me to a 4-1 win in that round, and 2 match victories on my side, 2 on his. Which brings us to the final step. We were both pretty amped up after that round and wanted to go run the best decks that we could again after. So I run basically the same group. I try to run it the same way, Hover versus Fox Brush. Some early huge hits, but ultimately Hover just ends up smashing me into the pocket at the end, and brings me down to an early loss, which, to be honest, looking back on the match, I really couldn't afford to make at this juncture. At this point, I bring out my Dracil, the old trusty, to try and hopefully tank some hits from a heavy attacker.
3, 2, 1.
He really is just able to get some massive hits off with that Hover Wyvern, and ultimately ends up getting Dracil trying to stabilize at an angle, which especially on Spike can happen. It actually remains relatively high speed even at this angle, but once it starts scraping, it's basically over for me in the match. And his hover is actually able to outspin me, which was disappointing. I was even surprised to see it happen in the end, but yeah, it's hard to take those huge Hover Wyvern hits in the beginning and have things still working correctly, unfortunately. So that ends up bringing us to what is one of the final battles in this, which is his Rod on Hexa versus my Wolf Hunt on Under Needle. I was actually pretty excited about this because of how well Wolf had performed today, and I just end up getting another of those weird bursts where it kind of gets caught on the extreme finish zone, kind of gets caught on the rail, and ultimately it's a really quick match, which was a little bit disappointing, but it brings me to you know, the last hope, the classic Dracil, Shark Scale with this matchup. Scale wanted me to go in that pocket so badly. It almost went in there itself, but it just kept hitting, and then finally it's able to sneak me in there for the win. So that allowed Rafahell to win the day. So yeah, that does it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in. We have about 16 players in this league from over 10 countries, and a lot more Beyblade to play in the future. So hope to see you next time, and there will be more content soon. Thanks.